Prior to the appointments, when President started the appointment, there were all kinds of, predictions and all kinds of expectations and all manner of talk in town. And, there were some who said that, look, looking at your rich experience as being a deputy finance minister, and all the reforms that you brought whilst you were there, it would have only been proper, that, you were appointed as a central bank governor. And there were even some were saying that you actually wanted to become a central bank governor. And some were even saying to go back.
Advocating for it.
Yes. So I know Seth. Seth wants to become the central bank governor, we talk to people and people talk to us. There were some who even said, look, you should go back as finance minister. Some said, no, don't take Seth Terkper back to finance minister. He doesn't spend. I mean, I'm sure you've heard some of these things. Two questions. Is it true that as a finance minister, you don't like spending? You are only interested in generating revenue and spending less? And two, as the advisor to the president on economic issues, are you enjoying this role? And what exactly do you do as the advisor to the president on economy? So two questions in one.
What's the first one?
The first one is, I'm so a chisel. You don't spend.
Well, to the extent that the credit goes to my president, for me it's okay.
Okay.
Because if you take Mills Mahama together, and it depends on what you mean by spending. If you take Mills Mahama together, or Mahama, Misata, together, or Mahama Jane, remember, E-schools was under her. Is that the infrastructure?
Right.
Isn't that spending? Right? But to go back a bit, through the CDB facility and whatever, we built a pipeline because we didn't want to flare gas. Right? Fast forward. And that was from Dr. Dufour's time, because we're talking about a management team that is still sort of intact, either from a party perspective or from, technical perspective. So we built a trouble to give us, gas. We know that we've not been able to expand it with one, that is spending with what? One oil field. Where's the continuation with 3 oil fields?
Yeah.
Are we talking about another form of spending? We built Terminal 3, and this is our self-financing. There are no guarantees on the taxpayer because we ring-fence the revenue to be generated from the project. But you have to spend first to build it before that revenue can repay. I mean, so we talked about port expansion. I mentioned Terminal 3 already. Tamale, Kumasi, airports. Those are the commercial ones that were, financing what we call the self-financing or smart borrowing. You don't take expensive loan and use it. But what we're able to do with that structure, the escrow and other structure, was to be able to therefore, divert concessional financing from the World Bank, African Development Bank for social infrastructure, Fufuso Solar, African Development Bank, right? E-schools, right? It's from the counterpart funding and the loan that is needed for the hospitals and the rest, and the spending, right? And you can ask, has it been rivaled, since President Mahama, left office and has come? So I don't know where that argument is, that issue is coming from.
Yeah.
Yes. Unless there's another meaning of spending.
That you're not aware of.
Pardon?
That you're not aware of. I mean, unless
if there's another
definition
of spending in public financial management terms, which then maybe that's not what my public financial, my accounting and others, teach me, right? And if you want to create jobs, remember cocoa rows, right? We did, significant cocoa rows from the syndication, an ability to still pay more to the farmer. Penning the two is tricky. You want to motivate the farmer. And our goal was to pay about 30 70%, to the farmer, and we're progressively getting there. At the same time, we're able to do, the cocoa roads and the rest. The fact that it's been messed up is beside the point, because it's evidence. The fact that they've not been continued, they've not been, because they're in the rain belt. Cocoa is in the forest belt, the rains. And so definitely there will be something happening in terms of, if you don't resurface the roads, they'll be washed away. And so we set up a resurfacing fund. And the description I always give is that the rain is our snow. You've been outside, during winter. And you see, after winter, you see, the roads being resurfaced. And the rest. So we need a resurfacing fund, right? President Mills or President Mahama did not issue the first sovereign bond. We use our oil revenue to pay it down in order that we can borrow, right? So is it a spending? To mitigate the debt so that it's low, so you can borrow at a good rate.
Yeah.
Do we need to default to prove that these things, work? We've defaulted. We are not borrowing. We're not going to the same markets any longer. But we're able to issue 4 successive bonds, and that's because we took off the first one, which President Mahama did not issue, which Professor Mills did not issue, but which allowed, together with HIPIC, some flow into the economy. And so you can say to his credit, since we eventually became a middle-income country and we started losing concessional financing, we could borrow at 40 years, for 40 years, including 10-year moratorium. So that means that 10 years you can build your Akosomo Dam within that period before you start repaying for it. And Akosomo Dam, by the way, paid for itself. Self-financing is not, through VRA. Payments into the, right. So I'm saying that if you go to those, back, to that era, right? Of course, it took, President Kufuor, to do the second, dam. Before that, Jerry did Akusi, dam, right? Yeah. So, what is development?
Okay.
It took until Mills Mahama and Mahama to do Terminal 3, an extension. Right. And now, with the model that we have, we could soon be on our way to do the internal, because it's proving that, you can borrow and use the proceeds from the project to pay for the loan. This is what has been elusive.
Yeah.
So we could be on to the bigger internal. With 30 plus, airlines, it's time. Even Dubai, with a big airport, is thinking about a new airport to rival the Heathrows and others of this world. We started our port expansion, which we stopped. Sorry, our airport expansion, which we stopped. If you've been to Ethiopia, before Ethiopia started.
I see.
Yes, and you can see the expansion that they have made there. Right, and there are countries that want to be a hub. See, Cote d'Ivoire is coming up in terms of port infrastructure. Cote d'Ivoire is doing, we're ahead of them. Why did we stop putting money into this? So if the thinking is that there's another form of spending which does not produce infrastructure, does not produce jobs and the rest.
I get it.
Sorry, yes.
So as the advisor to, so I get that, I get the impression that perhaps some people didn't understand your economic philosophy, and so they read all kinds of meanings
the
into it.
government's
So,
economic philosophy.
of course, what you just talked about, which is if you're going to borrow into productive sector, not for consumption.
Yes, but that led to, and if you borrow, you must learn to pay. And so those that are not being paid, remember from the project itself, we established a sinking fund.
Yeah.
Because you can't continue borrowing and not pay.
I agree.
We've seen the results now.
Yeah.
Right. And the same way with buffers.
Yeah.
Right. Overnight. One incident in the Middle East, crude oil prices are started going up.
Yeah.
Were we justified in saying when the crude oil prices were low, we should build buffers, we should increase reserves?
Right.
Right. Overnight.
And you've been consistent with this position.
Because the advanced countries, the emerging economies that emerge out of poverty, that's what it means. From Emirates to, to the Brazils and whatever who call themselves the BRICS, that is what they did.
Okay.
And I had some exposure into some of these countries, the countries that are ceded to the EU. So when my country becomes a middle-income country, why shouldn't we adopt similar policies? Exim Bank, you need an instrument, for the non-cocoa sector. if Cocoa Board is able to syndicate, and remember, if Cocoa Board is able to syndicate, and has syndicated since 1993, remember I said I'm here at PESA since 1992-93. That's how far back Cocoa Board has been syndicating and has been doing. Why do we have to destroy it, the model, if it works? Why not enhance it? I'm not against, bringing the other. They could come on the syndication after it's proven. If they want to compete, and it's a very tough competition that is done. Why don't we do that for the non-cocoa sector? What we call the non-traditional exports. We don't even have it for gold. You see where I'm going? So Eximbank. There's no brick economy, there's no emerging economy that doesn't have an Eximbank. Turkeyism, Koreaism, Chinaism, we know them. They are doing exports. They are supporting the Chinese firms and the rest to do exports. And it's no longer a container coming. They are supporting them to come and build plants.
Yeah.
Supporting them to come and build roads. So why don't we get a model also? Right? So these are the things which is credit. President Mahama, and Professor Mills approved from the sort of economic structures that we're talking about. And I'm saying that I want to be modest about this because there were contributions from, remember, we had advisors like Gobin, who was the vice president of the World Bank.
Right.
Cardinal Mills, who rose close to becoming the vice president, the head of, of the World Bank, and others, right? Ngozi, who was at the World Bank, was implementing some of those measures in Nigeria, domestic bond market and whatever. So these are not, exclusive to Seth Terkper.
Yeah. It was a teamwork.
Teamwork.
Yeah.
That's the point.
So you're advising the president on the economy, and I wanted to know exactly what's the nature of your work? If the president gets up tomorrow and he wants to, and say, thinks through an idea, are you the first point of call to say, look, this is what I'm thinking. Seth, what do you think? Even before the finance minister comes in, or he brings the two of you together? How do you work?
The president is the president.
Okay.
And he has a discretion. It could go to the Minister of Finance. Remember, it could be an idea from the Minister of Finance. It could be an idea from, any other.
So how do you come in?
It could be work. You come in at various points, at the discretion of the president. If I observe that something, needs to be done, and sometimes, I call the governor, I call, the minister. When issues come up, you are not the only depository of knowledge. So to give you specific examples, this question of floor and ceiling, we were practicing it more informally, right? If it wants to be formalized, of course, you should have them. Yes, they were your genius, but they are in positions. Just like at a point in time, a junior, to some of the economic managers, I was in a position to make recommendations and the rest. So you call them, you find out what is that's going on, right? And then, so if the president wants to know, fine. But they also have access, to the president. By the way, when you're in a flat server, one of the things which has come up, for me, is working with the chief of staff. A lot of economic issues and finance issues go through other, advisors. Remember, I'm not the only advisor, and people who hold substantive positions. Things come across and we bring, we exchange ideas. If something come, which is economic, based on an agreement, which I'm not legal, of course, I can go to Marietta.
Marietta, yes.
Exactly.
I get it.
Right. So it's a collective. If it's coming from something to do with social infrastructure, its implications, and Nanaoye, who has been in the social infrastructure space. So we also work as a collective,
right.
The advisors, yes. Right.